On a quiet Greek island, a private plane slammed into the sea, killing a young heir whose father owned half the ships on Earth. In a Paris mansion lined with mirrors and marble, a daughter collapsed again and again, revived 4 times before the house finally kept her. In a New York penthouse overlooking Fifth Avenue, one of the richest men alive lay dying, watching his wife disappear with his fortune. These deaths happened in different countries, different years, different rooms, but they shared one constant. 3 houses, built as monuments to success, kept becoming stages for loss. The question is not whether the Onassis family was cursed, but where that curse lived. Aristotle Onassis did not build houses to live in. He built them to prove that poverty would never touch his blood again. He was born in 1896 in Smyrna, a port city where Greeks and Turks lived side by side until they didn't. His father owned a modest tobacco business. The family had comfort, not wealth. Then came 1922. Turkish forces swept through the city. Buildings burned. Families scattered. Aristotle watched his father imprisoned, his uncle hanged, his inheritance erased. He was 16 years old when he became a refugee with $60 sewn into his coat. That coat was all that separated him from oblivion. For the rest of his life, Onassis treated property as proof that the fire would not come again, proof that borders could not erase him, proof that no government, no war, no twist of fate could leave him standing on a dock with nothing. Other men bought homes for comfort. Onassis bought them as shields. By the 1950s, he owned one of the largest shipping empires on the planet. More than 100 vessels carrying oil across oceans. Contracts with Saudi Arabia, deals with governments. His fleet moved the fuel that powered nations, and the profits moved into real estate. Not apartments, not cottages, monuments. First came the island. Scorpios sat in the Ionian Sea, a small landmass covered in cypress trees and wild herbs. It was uninhabited, no electricity, no roads. Onassis purchased it in 1963 for roughly $110,000. He did not buy it to visit. He bought it to own, to possess a piece of the world so completely that no one could take it back. He brought in engineers. Bulldozers reshaped the hillsides. Workers laid miles of pipe to supply fresh water. Generators powered lights that could be seen from the mainland. He built a main villa with sweeping views of the sea, guest cottages, a chapel, docks for his yacht, the Christina, which he had named after his daughter. The island became a private kingdom, invitation only, guarded, permanent. Then came Paris. The mansion on Avenue Foch sat in the 16th arrondissement, one of the most expensive streets in Europe. 6 stories, marble staircases, rooms designed by the same architects who restored Versailles. Chandeliers imported from Venice, floors inlaid with rare wood. Every detail screamed permanence. The house was not merely elegant, it was untouchable. Onassis did not choose Avenue Foch by accident. The street itself was a symbol. Royalty had lived there. Industrialists, diplomats. To own property on that block was to announce arrival, not just wealth, but legitimacy. The kind of legitimacy that could never be stripped away by war or borders or history. And then came New York. The penthouse overlooked Fifth Avenue at 88th Street, directly across from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Central Park. The living room alone spanned 2,000 square feet. Onassis filled it with art, Greek antiquities, sculptures, paintings by masters whose names guaranteed value. The penthouse was not a residence, It was a declaration. I own the view. I own the air. I own the skyline. 3 houses, 3 cities, 3 fortresses. Onassis believed that if he controlled enough space, he could control time itself. If the walls were strong enough, death would wait outside. If the rooms were beautiful enough, grief would have no place to sit. He was wrong, but he built them anyway. Because for a man who had once lost everything, owning everything felt like safety. The irony, of course, is that these houses were never really homes. They were trophies, proof of conquest. Onassis moved between them constantly, restless, never settling. He threw parties, hosted dignitaries, entertained celebrities. But he rarely lingered. The houses were stages, and he was always performing, always proving, always building. And the people he loved most were expected to live inside that performance. Every room in these houses was filled with beauty, but almost none were designed for tenderness or emotional rest. Maria Callas arrived at Scorpios in the summer of 1959. She was already famous, the greatest soprano of her generation. Audiences in Milan and New York worshipped her voice. Onassis worshipped her presence. He invited her to the island not as a guest, but as a queen. He wanted her to see what he had built, what he could offer. She walked through the villa and saw marble, silk curtains, furniture imported from France. Everything perfect, everything cold. Callas had spent her life performing in opera houses designed for spectacle, not intimacy. She recognized the aesthetic immediately. Scorpios was another stage. Beautiful, yes, but designed for display, not for living. The bedrooms were enormous, the ceilings soared, sound echoed. Privacy was architectural, not emotional. You could close a door and still feel observed. Onassis did not understand this. He thought beauty was enough. He thought if the setting was grand enough, love would grow naturally inside it. He filled the house with flowers, hired chefs to prepare elaborate meals, arranged evening walks through gardens lit with lanterns. He orchestrated romance the way he orchestrated business deals, with precision, with control, with an unshakable belief that effort equaled outcome. And for a while, it worked. Callas fell in love, not with the island, but with the man who owned it. She saw past the marble and the money. She saw a refugee who had clawed his way back from nothing, a man terrified of losing again. She thought she could be the one thing he kept close, the one thing he would not turn into a trophy. She was wrong. Their affair lasted nearly a decade. They sailed on the Christina, spent summers on Scorpios, stayed in the Paris mansion when opera commitments brought her to Europe. But Onassis never proposed, never offered permanence. He gave her access to his houses, but not ownership. She lived in his world, but always as a guest. Then came 1968. Onassis announced his engagement to Jacqueline Kennedy, the widow of the American president, the most famous woman on earth. The wedding would take place on Scorpios, in the chapel Onassis had built, on the island where he had courted Maria Callas. Callas heard the news and understood. She had been replaced, not by a better singer or a kinder woman, but by a more valuable symbol. Jackie Kennedy brought something Maria could not: political legitimacy, American power, a name that made Onassis untouchable. The wedding happened on October 20th, 1968. Scorpios was transformed, white flowers everywhere, candles lining the pathways. The chapel glowed. Photographers circled the island in boats trying to capture images. Onassis had orchestrated the event like a coronation. Jackie wore a Valentino dress. He wore a dark suit. They exchanged vows in Greek. The ceremony lasted 20 minutes. Maria Callas watched from Paris, alone in the Avenue Foch mansion, in a house that had once felt like theirs. Jackie moved into Scorpios as the new wife. She redecorated, changed the furniture, brought in American designers. The island that had been a refuge for Maria became a stage for Jackie. Photographers followed her everywhere. Magazines published photos of her swimming in the Ionian Sea, walking the gardens, smiling on the yacht. The island was no longer private. It was a spectacle, and Jackie hated it. She had married Onassis for protection, for financial security, for a life away from American scrutiny. But Scorpios offered none of that. The paparazzi were relentless. Boats circled the island daily. Telephoto lenses captured every moment. The walls Onassis had built could not keep the world out. They only trapped her inside. She spent less and less time on the island. She preferred New York. The Fifth Avenue penthouse offered anonymity. She could walk to museums, shop without being mobbed, live without performance. Onassis stayed on Scorpios alone, furious that his wife would not play the part he had written for her. The marriage crumbled in the same rooms where it had begun. By 1973, Jackie was spending Onassis's money faster than he could track it. $1.2 million in a single year on clothes, jewelry, and decorating the New York penthouse. Onassis fumed. He had built empires, owned fleets, acquired islands, but he could not control his own wife. The houses that were meant to impress her only reminded him of his failure. Maria Callas, meanwhile, had retreated to Paris. She stopped performing, stopped singing. She lived in the Avenue Foch mansion, a ghost in rooms she no longer recognized. The house had been redecorated after Jackie's wedding. Everything that reminded Onassis of Maria had been removed. New drapes, new art, new furniture. The mansion erased her, even as she still walked its halls. She died there in 1977, alone, heart failure. She was 53 years old. The house did not mourn her. It simply continued, silent, marble, permanent. At the height of his power, Aristotle Onassis owned islands, airlines, and palaces, yet his private world was already destabilizing. By 1969, Onassis controlled assets worth an estimated $500 million. Adjusted for inflation, that approaches $4 billion today. His fleet included more than 70 oil tankers. His airline, Olympic Airways, dominated Greek aviation. He owned property in Monte Carlo, London, Paris, New York, and Greece. He was invited to state dinners, photographed with presidents, treated as royalty wherever he traveled. The numbers were staggering. His largest tanker, the Olympic Glory, could carry 270,000 tons of crude oil. A single voyage generated profits exceeding $1 million. He had contracts with Saudi Aramco, Shell, and Mobil. His ships moved approximately 5% of the world's oil supply. Governments negotiated with him as if he were a sovereign nation. But numbers do not stabilize families. His son, Alexander, was 20 years old in 1969. Tall, handsome, fluent in 5 languages. Onassis groomed him to inherit the empire, taught him shipping routes, introduced him to bankers, brought him to negotiations. Alexander hated all of it. He did not want tankers. He wanted airplanes. Alexander learned to fly at 16. By 20, he was piloting private planes across Europe. He loved the mechanics, the freedom, the solitude of being airborne. He told his father he wanted to work in aviation, not shipping. Onassis dismissed the idea. Aviation was a hobby. Shipping was legacy. The arguments happened in the same houses meant to represent family unity. In Scorpios, in Paris, in New York, father and son screaming at each other in marble hallways. Alexander accusing his father of control. Onassis accusing his son of ingratitude. Neither willing to bend. Christina, Onassis's daughter, watched these fights from the edges of rooms. She was 19 in 1969, quiet, observant, already struggling with weight and self-image. Her father adored her, but in the distant way powerful men adore daughters. He gave her money, jewelry, access to the houses, but not attention, not presence. She spent hours alone in the Paris mansion, walking empty hallways, sitting in drawing rooms designed for parties that no longer happened. The house was too large for intimacy, too formal for comfort. She felt like a visitor in her own inheritance. The family was fracturing, but the houses remained perfect, polished, immaculate. Staff cleaned them daily. Flowers were replaced, linens pressed. The home showed no evidence of the emotional collapse happening inside them. And then came Jackie. Her presence destabilized everything. Alexander despised her. He saw her as a gold digger, a performer, someone who had married his father for money and status, not love. He refused to attend family dinners when she was present, refused to visit Scorpios. The island that had once been a refuge became a battleground. Christina tried to stay neutral. She liked Jackie initially, thought she might bring her father happiness. But as the marriage deteriorated, Christina saw the truth. Jackie was spending Onassis's fortune while offering nothing in return. No affection, no companionship, no loyalty. The New York penthouse became Jackie's domain. She redecorated it entirely, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on furniture, art, and renovations. Onassis barely visited. He stayed in Greece, managing his ships, watching his fortune circulate while his family dissolved. By 1972, the peak had passed. Oil prices were rising, shipping contracts were tightening, competition from Japanese and Norwegian fleets was intensifying. Onassis's empire was still massive, but growth had stalled. He was 72 years old. His health was declining. Myasthenia gravis, a degenerative disease, was weakening his muscles. His eyelids drooped. His hands trembled. He moved slower. He spent more time on Scorpios, not because he loved the island, but because he could control it. The villa was his. The staff obeyed him. The gates kept the world out. He sat on the terrace overlooking the sea, watching the horizon, waiting for something he could not name. Alexander visited once that year. They argued again about the business, about Jackie, about the future. Alexander left furious, swearing he would not return until his father apologized. Onassis did not apologize. He believed he was building something permanent, a dynasty that would outlast him. He thought the houses would hold his family together, that wealth would protect them, that control would prevent loss. He was standing at the peak, looking down, unable to see that the ground beneath him was already cracking. The island meant for weddings and legacy became the place where the dynasty first lost its future. January 22, 1973. Alexander Onassis was piloting a small amphibious plane near Athens. The aircraft was a Piaggio, used for short hops between islands. Alexander had flown it dozens of times. He knew the eye, controls, knew the weight, knew the risks. The plane took off normally, climbed to about 30 feet. Then the nose pitched down. Witnesses on the ground saw it happen in seconds. The plane dropped, hit the water hard. The The fuselage crumpled. Alexander was pulled from the wreckage unconscious. His skull was fractured. His brain was swelling. He was rushed to a hospital in Athens, then transferred to a London clinic. Neurosurgeons operated, tried to relieve the pressure, tried to save him. He never woke up. Alexander died on January 23, 1973. He was 24 years old. Aristotle Onassis received the news on Scorpios. He was standing in the main villa when the call came. The house that had hosted his wedding. The house where he had entertained kings and presidents. The house meant to symbolize permanence. He collapsed. Staff caught him before he hit the marble floor. He screamed that it was not possible, that there had been a mistake, that Alexander was young, strong, careful. But the doctors confirmed it. Skull fracture, cerebral hemorrhage, irreversible damage. His son was gone. Onassis demanded an investigation. He insisted the plane had been sabotaged, that enemies had tampered with the controls, that his son's death was not an accident but an assassination. Greek authorities examined the wreckage, found no evidence of foul play. The control cables had malfunctioned, but there was no sign of tampering. Mechanical failure. Tragic. Random. Onassis refused to believe it. He hired private investigators, offered rewards for information, spent months searching for a conspiracy that did not exist. He could not accept that his son had died from simple, stupid chance. That all the wealth, all the control, all the houses and fleets and power had not protected Alexander from a mechanical failure in a small plane. The island changed after that. Scorpios had been designed as a paradise, a place of celebration. Now it was the last place. Onassis had seen his son alive. The villa became unbearable. Every room reminded him. Every window overlooked the sea where Alexander used to swim. Every pathway led to memories Onassis could not escape. He stopped hosting parties, stopped inviting guests. The island fell silent. Christina visited once after the funeral. She walked through the villa and felt her brother everywhere. His clothes still hung in the closet. His books sat on the shelves. The staff had not moved anything. The house preserved him, even though he was gone. She could not stay. The island suffocated her. She returned to Paris. Onassis stayed. He spent weeks sitting on the terrace, staring at the sea, not speaking. Staff brought him food. He barely ate. His health deteriorated faster. The myasthenia gravis worsened. His body was failing, but it was his will that had broken. Psychologists would later describe this as complicated grief. Grief that does not resolve. That traps the mourner in a loop of denial and rage and despair. Onassis exhibited every symptom. He refused to dismantle Alexander's room, refused to discuss the future, refused to accept that his dynasty had lost its heir, and the house witnessed all of it. Some staff members later claimed the villa felt different after Alexander's death, heavier, colder. They described hearing footsteps in empty hallways, doors closing when no one was near. These accounts were dismissed as superstition, grief playing tricks, but the stories persisted. Aviation experts examined the crash thoroughly. The Piaggio had a history of control issues. The elevator cables were prone to binding. Alexander had known this, had complained about the plane weeks before the crash. But he had flown it anyway, confident, young, immortal. The crash was ruled accidental, mechanical failure, pilot error, possibly. No conspiracy, no curse, just physics and bad luck. But to Onassis, it was proof that the world was hostile, that no amount of wealth could guarantee safety, that the houses he had built to protect his family had failed at the one thing that mattered. He began to see Scorpios differently, not as a paradise, but as a cage. A beautiful, expensive cage where his son had been taken from him. The island became a monument to loss. The chapel where he had married Jackie now felt like a mausoleum. The villa where he had entertained dignitaries now echoed with absence. Christina understood this instinctively. She told friends that Scorpios had changed, that the island felt cursed. She would not return for years. Onassis stayed because he had nowhere else to go. The Paris mansion reminded him of Maria. The New York penthouse reminded him of Jackie's betrayal. Only Scorpios was his, completely, undeniably, and now it was the place where his future had died. The dynasty had lost its heir. The empire had lost its next generation, and the island, built to celebrate life, had become the stage for the family's first irreversible tragedy. Christina, Onassis returned to Paris not to live, but to disappear slowly behind locked doors and heavy curtains. The mansion on Avenue Foch became her refuge after Alexander's death. She was 22 years old, heir to a fortune she did not want, daughter of a father she could not reach, sister to a ghost she could not bury. The house offered privacy, silence, distance from a world that expected her to grieve politely and move on. She did not move on. Christina had struggled with weight since adolescence. The tabloids were cruel, compared her to her elegant stepmother, called her fat, unattractive, unworthy of the Onassis name. She internalized every word, began a cycle of extreme dieting and binge eating that would last the rest of her life. Her weight fluctuated by 50 pounds within months. She tried every diet, every pill, every promise of transformation. Nothing worked. By 1974, she had moved beyond diets into pharmaceuticals, amphetamines to suppress appetite, barbiturates to sleep, tranquilizers to numb the anxiety that stalked her through the mansion's endless hallways. Her doctors prescribed some of these. Others she obtained through friends or purchased discreetly. The combinations were dangerous. She knew this. She did not care. The first overdose happened in 1974. Staff found her unconscious in her bedroom. Paramedics revived her, rushed her to a private hospital, pumped her stomach. She woke furious, not grateful, furious that they had brought her back. Her father visited once, sat beside her hospital bed, did not ask why, did not offer comfort. He told her she was embarrassing the family, that she needed to be stronger. Then he left. Christina returned to Avenue Foch, to the same bedroom, the same pills, the same emptiness. The mansion itself seemed designed to amplify isolation. 6 stories, 30 rooms, staff quarters separated from the family wing. You could walk the entire house and never encounter another person. The drawing rooms were too formal for casual conversation. The dining room sat 20. The library held thousands of books no one read. Every space was designed for performance, not intimacy. Christina spent days alone. She woke late, wandered the house in a robe, ate erratically, took pills to sleep, took pills to wake. The staff worried, but said nothing. She was the heiress. They were employees. The boundary was absolute. Her second overdose happened in 1975. Same bedroom, same pills, same paramedics. This time, the hospital kept her for a week. Psychiatric evaluation. The doctors diagnosed severe depression, recommended inpatient treatment. Christina refused. She was not insane. She was grieving. There was a difference. Onassis was dying by then. The myasthenia gravis had progressed. He was bedridden in New York. Christina visited him once. The penthouse overlooking Fifth Avenue felt like a museum, sterile, cold. Jackie was gone, spending his money in Paris. Onassis lay in bed, alone, unable to lift his arms. Father and daughter sat in silence. Neither knew what to say. The walls were too high, the distance too great. She left after an hour. Aristotle Onassis died on March 15th, 1975. He was 75 years old. Christina inherited everything: the ships, the airline, the houses, the fortune estimated at $500 million. She also inherited the grief. The Paris mansion became her prison. She moved through it like a ghost. Staff later described her as distant, disconnected. She would sit in the drawing room for hours, staring at nothing. She stopped answering the phone, stopped opening mail. The house accumulated silence like dust. Her third overdose happened in 1976. Staff found her in the bathtub, unconscious, water still running, pills scattered on the tile floor. Paramedics revived her again, transported her again, the hospital again, the psychiatric evaluation again. This time, her friends intervened. They told her she needed help, real help, not pills, not diets, not the mansion. She needed to leave Paris, leave the house that was slowly erasing her. She agreed, briefly. Christina checked into a Swiss clinic, stayed 3 weeks. The doctors tried talk therapy, medication adjustments, group sessions. She hated all of it. She was not like the other patients. She was an Onassis. She did not belong in group therapy with strangers who could not understand what it meant to inherit an empire built on loss. She left the clinic, returned to Avenue Foch, to the same bedroom, the same pills, the same silence. Environmental psychologists studying trauma and architecture have identified patterns in how spaces influence mental health. Large formal homes with limited natural light and poor acoustic warmth correlate with higher rates of depression and isolation. The Avenue Foch mansion exhibited all these traits: high ceilings, marble floors, north-facing windows that emitted weak gray light. Sound did not absorb. It echoed. Voices carried. Privacy was architectural, but warmth was absent. Christina was living in a mausoleum designed for display. Her fourth overdose happened in 1977. Staff found her in the same bedroom where she had been found 3 times before. The same pills, the same unconsciousness, the same paramedics. But this time, she had been down longer. Her heart had stopped briefly. The medics had to work harder. Chest compressions, defibrillation. She came back, but barely. The hospital kept her for 2 weeks. The doctors were blunt. One more overdose would likely be fatal. Her body could not survive another round of barbiturates and revival. She was 26 years old, and her organs were already compromised. Christina nodded, promised to be more careful, returned to the mansion. But something had shifted. She began to see the house differently, not as a refuge, but as a collaborator. The rooms were too quiet, the walls too thick, the doors too heavy. If she collapsed in one of the distant bedrooms, no one would find her for hours, maybe days. The mansion was not protecting her, it was enabling her. She started spending less time there, traveled to Switzerland, to Greece, to New York, anywhere but Avenue Foch. But she always returned. The mansion held her things, her memories, her father's ghost, her brother's absence. The house was a trap she could not escape because leaving felt like abandonment. Friends later said Christina believed the mansion was cursed, that her family's tragedies had seeped into the walls. that the house remembered every argument, every overdose, every failure. She told one friend she sometimes heard footsteps in the hallway outside her bedroom. When she opened the door, no one was there. The friend suggested she sell the house, move somewhere smaller, brighter, less haunted. Christina refused. The mansion was hers. Selling it felt like admitting defeat, like saying her father had been wrong to buy it, like erasing the last physical proof that the Onassis dynasty had once been real. So she stayed, and the house stayed, silent, marble, permanent, waiting for the next collapse. From a Fifth Avenue penthouse, Aristotle Onassis watched his fortune circulate without him while his body failed. By 1974, Onassis could no longer walk unassisted. The myasthenia gravis had weakened his legs, his arms, his ability to swallow. His eyelids drooped so severely he could barely see. He spent most days in bed, propped on pillows, staring at the ceiling of the New York penthouse. The view that had once symbolized conquest now mocked him. Central Park stretched below. The city moved. His body did not. Jackie was gone most days. She spent her time shopping on Madison Avenue, lunching with friends, redecorating apartments she had no intention of living in permanently. She had married Onassis for security, not companionship. Now that his health was failing, she saw no reason to pretend. The financial details were staggering. Between 1968 and 1974, Jackie spent an estimated $30 million of Onassis's money. Adjusted for inflation, that approaches $150 million today. Clothes, jewelry, art, furniture, renovations. She purchased a Fifth Avenue apartment separate from the penthouse just to store her wardrobe. The bills arrived in stacks. Onassis could barely hold the papers, but he could read the numbers. He was furious, but also helpless. Divorce would be expensive, publicly humiliating, legally complicated. Jackie's prenuptial agreement entitled her to a percentage of his estate if they separated. Onassis's lawyers advised him to wait, to negotiate, to avoid a spectacle. He waited, and while he waited, his body deteriorated further. The penthouse had 15 rooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, art worth millions, furniture imported from Europe. It was designed to impress, to host, to dominate. But Onassis could no longer dominate anything. He could not walk to the windows, could not lift a glass of water, could not control his wife, his fortune, or his failing muscles. Staff later described him as bitter, paranoid. He accused employees of stealing, accused doctors of incompetence, accused Jackie of waiting for him to die. He was not entirely wrong about the last one. Christina visited in late 1974. She found her father in bed, skeletal, barely able to speak. The man who had built shipping empires could not lift his head without assistance. She sat beside him for an hour. He tried to talk about the business, about the ships, about the future. His words slurred. She could barely understand him. She left the penthouse crying. The disease progressed relentlessly. Myasthenia gravis attacks the neuromuscular junctions, prevents muscles from receiving signals from the brain. There is no cure. Treatment involves steroids and immunosuppressants, which bring their own complications. Onassis's doctors tried everything. Nothing stopped the decline. By January 1975, he could no longer eat solid food, liquids only. He lost weight rapidly, 70 pounds in 6 months. His face hollowed. His hands became skeletal. Nurses fed him through tubes. He hated it, hated the indignity, hated being dependent, hated that the penthouse he had bought to symbolize power had become the place where he lost all of it. Jackie visited less and less. She told friends she could not bear to see him like that. The truth was simpler. She had never loved him. The marriage had been transactional. Now that the transaction was ending, she saw no reason to perform affection. Onassis knew this. It destroyed him. He had spent his life believing control was possible. That if you accumulated enough wealth, enough property, enough power, you could dictate outcomes. The penthouse was proof of that belief. Every room was curated, every detail chosen, every surface reflected his will. But the disease ignored his will. The muscles failed, the body shut down, and the penthouse, for all its beauty, could not stop it. Friends who visited described the scene as surreal. Onassis lying in a hospital bed imported into the master bedroom. Medical equipment beeping softly. Nurses moving through the space. And beyond the windows, Central Park stretched green and alive. The city moved. The world continued. He was dying while the empire he had built circulated without him. The financial reports still arrived. His ships were still operating, still generating revenue. The fleet was worth hundreds of millions. The airline was profitable. The investments were sound. But none of it mattered. He could not enjoy it, could not direct it, could not even hold the papers long enough to read them. Christina tried to manage the business. She attended meetings, signed documents, made decisions, but she had no training, no interest. She was 24 years old, grieving her brother, watching her father die, and trying to run a shipping empire she did not understand. The executives tolerated her, waited for Onassis to either recover or die so they could negotiate with someone who knew what they were doing. He did neither. He lingered. By February 1975, Onassis was bedridden completely. He could not move without assistance, could not breathe deeply, could not speak clearly. Doctors warned Christina that the end was near. Days, possibly. Weeks at most. She sat with him when she could, held his hand, tried to tell him it would be okay. He did not respond. Jackie returned to New York, briefly, not to comfort him, but to secure her legal position. She met with lawyers, reviewed the prenuptial agreement, made sure her financial interests were protected. Then she left again. Onassis died on March 15th, 1975. He was in a Paris hospital by then, transferred for a final attempt at treatment. Christina was with him. Jackie was not. He died in the early morning, quietly. His body had simply stopped. The penthouse outlasted him. After his death, the Fifth Avenue property went into probate. Jackie fought for her share. Christina fought to minimize it. The legal battle lasted years. The penthouse sat empty, furniture covered in sheets, art removed to storage. The windows overlooking Central Park reflected nothing but sky. Eventually, Christina sold it. She could not bear to keep it, could not walk those halls without seeing her father in bed, wasting away, powerless. The penthouse had been designed to prove he was untouchable. Instead, it had become the stage where he lost everything. The buyer was a real estate developer, anonymous, wealthy, uninterested in history. The penthouse was gutted, walls removed, new layouts installed. The space that had witnessed Aristotle Onassis's final humiliation was erased, renovated, repurposed. But Christina never forgot what it had looked like. The bed, the equipment, the silence, the view that did not care whether he lived or died. She told a friend years later that the penthouse was the worst of the three houses, not because it was less beautiful, but because it was the most honest. Scorpios had hidden tragedy behind paradise. Paris had wrapped despair in elegance, but New York had shown her the truth, that wealth could not protect you, that empires did not care if you suffered, that houses were just walls, and walls could not keep death outside. Her father had believed otherwise. He had built monuments to permanence, had filled them with beauty, had controlled every detail. And in the end, he had died in one of those monuments, alone, abandoned, powerless. Christina inherited all of it, the houses, the ships, the fortune, and the lesson. Control was an illusion, safety was a lie, and the walls could not save you. Christina inherited everything, including the rooms where her family had already vanished. The lawyers read the will in Paris, April 1975. Christina sat in an office lined with mahogany and law books, listening to men in suits catalog her new reality: the Olympic Airways fleet, the tanker ships, the Monte Carlo properties, the bank accounts, the art, the houses, Scorpios, Avenue Foch, Fifth Avenue. She signed the papers, became one of the wealthiest women on earth, walked out into sunlight feeling heavier than when she entered. The inheritance was valued at approximately $500 million. Adjusted for current value, that approaches $2 billion. The shipping empire alone generated annual revenues exceeding $100 million. The airline employed thousands. The property spanned 4 continents. She was 24 years old, unprepared, unwilling, uninterested, and completely trapped. Christina's first instinct was to sell everything, liquidate the fleet, shut down the airline, auction the houses, take the cash, and disappear. Her lawyers advised against it, and the estate was complex. Selling too quickly would cost her hundreds of millions in taxes and penalties. Contracts had to be honored. Debts had to be settled. The ships could not simply be docked and abandoned. So she waited. And while she waited, she moved between the houses like a sleepwalker. Avenue Foch became her primary residence, not because she loved it, but because she could not decide where else to go. The mansion felt larger after her father's death, emptier. She walked hallways that echoed, sat in drawing rooms designed for parties she would never host. The staff maintained the house immaculately, but there was no life in it, just routine, just cleaning and polishing and waiting for orders that rarely came. She began to avoid certain rooms: her father's study, Alexander's old bedroom, the dining room where family meals had dissolved into arguments. These spaces felt occupied, not by people, but by memories so heavy they had taken on weight. Friends who visited described Christina as distant. She would greet them warmly, then disappear mid-conversation. They would find her hours later in some distant wing of the house, sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. When they asked if she was okay, she would say yes. The word meant nothing. Her weight fluctuated wildly. She would starve herself for weeks, losing 30 pounds, then binge for days, gaining it all back. The pills continued: amphetamines, barbiturates, sleeping aids. She told herself she was managing. The overdoses had stopped. She was being careful, but careful is not the same as healthy. Scorpios became unbearable. She visited once in late 1975, hoping the island might offer peace. It did not. The villa felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by absences. Alexander's room, her father's chair on the terrace, the chapel where Jackie had married into the family. Every corner held a memory she did not want to relive. She left after 3 days, did not return for years. The New York penthouse was sold within months. Christina could not stand it. The view, the silence, the memory of her father dying in a hospital bed while the city moved below. She instructed the lawyers to liquidate. Take the best offer. She did not care about the price. She just wanted it gone. The buyer paid $6 million. The property was worth at least $8 million. Christina did not negotiate, but selling one house did not ease the burden. She still owned Scorpios, still owned Avenue Foch, still owned properties in Monte Carlo, Athens, and London. Each one required maintenance, staff, decisions. She was responsible for all of it, and she wanted none of it. Her solution was to hire managers, professionals who could run the properties without her involvement. She paid them generously, gave them authority, then disappeared. She traveled constantly: Greece, Switzerland, Argentina, anywhere but the houses. She stayed in hotels, rented apartments, lived out of suitcases. The inheritance followed her. Bank statements, legal documents, investment reports. She signed what her advisors told her to sign, ignored the rest, but the houses remained, waiting. Psychologists later described Christina's behavior as avoidance compounded by trauma. She could not process the loss of her brother and father, so she tried to outrun it. But the houses anchored her. They were physical proof of a family that no longer existed. Selling them would be an admission that the dynasty was over. Keeping them was torture. She chose torture. Avenue Foch became a monument to paralysis. She would return for weeks at a time, then flee. Staff kept the house ready, beds made, meals prepared, flowers fresh. But Christina barely noticed. She moved through the rooms mechanically, slept in different bedrooms, ate erratically, took her pills, waited for something she could not name. Friends suggested therapy. She refused. Therapy meant talking about feelings. She did not want to talk. She wanted the feelings to stop. Pills did that more efficiently than conversation. Her business managers urged her to engage with the empire, to attend board meetings, to learn the operations, to take control. She attended a few meetings, sat silent, signed the documents placed in front of her, then stopped attending. The executives realized she was not going to lead. They began making decisions without her. As long as the profits continued, she did not object. She wanted the money. She did not want the responsibility. By 1976, Christina was living almost entirely in hotels. The houses stood empty. Staff maintained them. Gardeners tended Scorpios. Cleaners polished Avenue Foch. But the heiress was absent. The inheritance had become a ghost operation, vast wealth circulating without its owner, and Christina was drowning. The pills were no longer managing the pain. They were masking it. Beneath the numbness was grief she had never processed, rage at her father for dying, guilt over her brother's death, loneliness so profound it had become her baseline. The houses could not fix any of it. They only made it worse. Because everywhere she went, she carried the weight of rooms she could not escape. Rooms where her family had lived, fought, and died. Rooms that were hers now, completely, legally, inescapably. Inheritance was supposed to be a gift. For Christina, it was a sentence. Christina changed husbands, but not houses, and each marriage collapsed inside familiar walls. Her first marriage happened in 1971, before her father died. She was 20 years old. The groom was Joseph Bolker, a Los Angeles real estate developer, 48 years old, divorced, American, everything Aristotle Onassis hated. They married in Las Vegas. No family, no ceremony, a courthouse and a certificate. Christina thought she was escaping. Onassis saw it as rebellion. He cut her off financially, told her she was disowned. She did not care. She was in love. The marriage lasted 9 months. Bolker could not adapt to her world. The wealth, the scrutiny, the expectations. They fought constantly about money, about her family, about the future. Christina wanted children. Bolker wanted peace. Neither got what they wanted. They divorced in 1972. Christina returned to Avenue Foch, to her father's empire, to the life she had tried to escape. The mansion welcomed her back with open doors and empty rooms. Her second marriage happened in 1975. Alexander Andreadis, Greek, wealthy, approved by her father's circle. The wedding took place on Scorpios, a proper ceremony, family present, priests, tradition. Christina wore white, smiled for photographs, believed this time would be different. It was not. Andreadis wanted her money. She wanted stability. Neither was honest about their motives. The marriage unraveled within months. They fought in the Scorpios villa, in the Paris mansion, in hotel rooms across Europe. He accused her of being controlling. She accused him of being disinterested. Both were right. They divorced in 1977, less than 2 years after the wedding. Christina retreated to Avenue Foch, again, to the same bedroom where she had overdosed, to the same halls that echoed, to the same isolation she could not escape. Her third marriage happened in 1978. Sergei Kausov, a Russian shipping executive, handsome, charming, communist. The relationship was politically complicated. Christina did not care. She needed someone, anyone. She married him in Moscow. The marriage was doomed from the beginning. Kausov was KGB. Christina learned this months into the marriage. He had been assigned to her. The romance was surveillance. The wedding was a mission. She was a Cold War asset, not a wife. She fled, divorced him in 1980, returned to Paris, to Avenue Foch, to the mansion that kept accepting her no matter how many times she failed. Her fourth marriage happened in 1984. Thierry Roussel, French, pharmaceutical heir, father of her only child. The wedding took place in Paris. Christina was pregnant, hopeful, convinced that motherhood would fix what wealth and marriage had not. Her daughter, Athina, was born in January 1985. Christina adored her, poured all her thwarted love into the child, decorated a nursery in Avenue Foch, hired nannies, bought everything a baby could need. She was determined to be a good mother, to give Athina the stability she had never known. But Roussel was already cheating, with a Swedish model, openly, publicly. Christina discovered the affair within months of giving birth. She confronted him. He did not deny it, said he loved the other woman, said the marriage had been a mistake. Christina collapsed, not metaphorically, literally. She fainted in the hallway of the Avenue Foch mansion. Staff found her unconscious, called paramedics. She was revived, again, hospitalized, again. The cycle continued. Roussel wanted a divorce. Christina refused. She could not bear another failure, could not admit that even motherhood had not saved her. They stayed married legally, but lived separately. He kept the model. She kept the child. The marriage was a performance, hollow, painful, maintained only for appearances. And it all happened in the same houses. The Scorpios villa had hosted 2 of her weddings. The Paris mansion had witnessed all 4 divorces. The rooms did not change. The furniture remained. The staff stayed professional. But the walls absorbed every argument, every betrayal, every collapse. Christina told a friend that she felt cursed, that every relationship failed in the same place, that the houses were witnesses to her inability to be loved. The friend suggested she sell the properties, start fresh somewhere new. Christina refused. The houses were all she had left. Selling them would mean admitting the Onassis dynasty was truly over, that her father had failed, that she had failed. She would rather suffer in familiar rooms than face the void of starting over. Psychologists studying relationship patterns note that repeating failures in the same environment can create negative associations. The brain begins to link the space with the pain. Christina's repeated divorces in Avenue Foch likely intensified her depression. The mansion became a trigger. Every hallway reminded her of arguments. Every bedroom held memories of abandonment. But she could not leave. The house was hers, completely. She had nowhere else to go. By 1987, Christina was living alone in Avenue Foch with her daughter and a rotating staff of nannies. Roussel visited occasionally, took Athena for weekends. Otherwise, Christina was isolated. She stopped seeing friends, stopped traveling. The woman who had once fled from house to house now rarely left her bedroom. The pills continued. The weight fluctuated. The loneliness deepened. Her fourth marriage had not saved her. Motherhood had not healed her. The houses had not protected her. She was 37 years old, one of the wealthiest women alive, and completely, irreversibly alone. The mansion on Avenue Foch stood silent, perfect, immaculate, waiting for the collapse it had seen 4 times before. Christina died far from her father's houses, yet in a bathtub that felt disturbingly familiar. November 19th, 1988, Buenos Aires, Argentina. Christina had traveled there to visit friends, needed distance from Paris, from Roussel, from the mansion. She checked into a private villa in the Tortugas Country Club. Quiet, exclusive, safe. She seemed in good spirits, spent the day with her daughter, had dinner with friends, went to bed early. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. The next morning, staff found her in the bathtub, unconscious, naked. The water had gone cold. Pills were scattered on the floor nearby. Barbiturates, the same prescription she had been taking for years. Paramedics arrived within minutes, tried to revive her. No pulse, no breathing, no response. She was pronounced dead at the scene, 37 years old. Cause of death listed as acute pulmonary edema. Heart failure, possibly triggered by the pills, possibly by years of abuse, possibly by grief that had never healed. The autopsy was inconclusive. No definitive overdose, no suicide note, no clear explanation, just a body in a bathtub and a lifetime of pain that had finally stopped. The news reached Paris within hours. Staff at Avenue Foch received the call. The mansion fell silent. No one knew what to do. The heiress was dead. The dynasty was over. The houses had outlasted the family. Athena, Christina's daughter, was 3 years old. Too young to understand. Too young to grieve properly. She became the sole heir, the last Onassis. Roussel gained control of her inheritance until she turned 18. The fortune, the houses, the empire, all held in trust for a child who would grow up without her mother. Friends who knew Christina were not surprised by her death. Saddened, yes, but not surprised. She had been dying slowly for years, the overdoses, the depression, the marriages, the isolation. Her body had simply given out, but the location troubled them. Buenos Aires, a city with no Onassis history, a house she did not own, a bathtub she had never used before. Why there? Why then? Some believed it was deliberate, that she had traveled to Argentina specifically to die somewhere her daughter would not find her, somewhere far from the mansions that had witnessed every other collapse. A final act of control. a way to escape the houses that had trapped her. Others believed it was random, that she had taken too many pills, that her heart had simply stopped, that there was no grand plan, just a tired woman in a bathtub who did not wake up. The truth is unknowable, but the pattern is undeniable. Alexander died near Scorpios. Aristotle died in a hospital, but his decline happened in the Fifth Avenue penthouse. Christina overdosed 4 times in Avenue Foch before dying in Argentina. 3 generations, 3 houses, 4 deaths. The mansions did not kill them, but they witnessed the unraveling, absorbed the grief, became stages for a family that could not escape its own despair. After Christina's death, the houses fell silent. Scorpios remained abandoned. No one wanted to buy a private island associated with tragedy. The villa decayed. Plants overgrew the pathways. The chapel crumbled. The docks rotted. The paradise Aristotle built to symbolize permanence became a ruin. Avenue Foch was maintained but rarely used. Athena inherited it, but she grew up in Switzerland with her father. The mansion stood empty for years. Staff came weekly to clean, to dust, to preserve a space no one inhabited. Eventually it was sold. The new owners gutted it, removed the memories, turned it into something else. The New York penthouse had already been sold, renovated, repurposed. The space where Aristotle died. Watching his fortune circulate without him was now someone else's living room. Unrecognizable, unmarked, 3 houses, built to immortalize a dynasty, now scattered, sold, repurposed. The family they were meant to protect was gone. But the question remains, did the houses cause the tragedies? Or did they simply bear witness? Environmental psychologists argue that spaces absorb emotional history, that trauma imprints on architecture, not supernaturally, but psychologically. The brain associates places with experiences. Walking into a room where you suffered creates a physiological response: increased heart rate, cortisol release, anxiety. Christina spent years in rooms where she had overdosed, where her father had screamed at her, where her marriages had collapsed. Every return reinforced the association. The mansion became a trigger, a reminder, a trap. But it was not cursed. It was just a house, marble and wood and glass. Beautiful, expensive, indifferent. The curse, if there was, lived in the people. In Aristotle's belief that property could substitute for presence, in Christina's inherited grief, in the family's inability to connect emotionally despite sharing physical space. The houses did not create that dysfunction. They just provided the stage where it played out, over and over, until there was no one left to perform. After the deaths, the houses remained, immaculate, silent, and increasingly unwanted. Scorpio sat empty for 17 years after Christina's death. The Greek government attempted to seize it for back taxes. Legal battles delayed the process. Athena Onassis inherited the island when she turned 18 in 2003, but she did not visit. The villa had been looted by then, furniture stolen, windows smashed, graffiti marked the walls. The paradise her grandfather built had become a cautionary tale. Real estate agents tried to sell it, listed the island for 200 million euros. No buyers emerged. Who wants to purchase a private island known for tragedy? The association alone depressed the value. Wealthy buyers have options. They chose islands without ghosts. In 2013, Athena finally sold Scorpios. The buyer was Ekaterina Rybolovleva, daughter of a Russian billionaire. Purchase price was reportedly $150 million. 75% less than the initial asking price. The transaction made headlines not for the sale, but for the discount. Tragedy had devalued paradise. The new owners renovated extensively, bulldozed the decaying villa, built a new structure, replanted the gardens, erased as much of the Onassis history as architecture allowed. The island still exists, but the version Aristotle created is gone. Avenue Foch followed a similar trajectory. After Christina's death, the mansion stood maintained, but empty. Athena had no interest in living there. Too many ghosts. Too much pain. She authorized the sale in 2000. The buyer was a private equity, executive, anonymous, wealthy, uninterested in preserving history. The mansion was gutted, walls removed, layouts reconfigured. The grand staircase remained, but everything else changed. The rooms where Christina overdosed were demolished. The spaces where Aristotle had entertained dignitaries were subdivided. The house that had witnessed the dynasty's collapse was erased from within. The building still stands. Same address, same facade. But the interior is unrecognizable. A new family lives there now. They know the history. They do not discuss it. The New York penthouse had been sold years earlier, renovated, resold, renovated again. By the time Christina died, no trace of Aristotle Onassis remained. The space had been recycled completely. New walls, new floors, new memories. Real estate professionals describe this process as necessary. Properties associated with tragedy must be transformed to be sellable. Paint over the past. Change the layout. Remove the associations. Otherwise, the history depresses the value indefinitely. But the transformation is never complete. Records remain. Articles are published. Documentaries are made. The internet preserves everything. Future owners will always know what happened. They can renovate the rooms, but they cannot erase the narrative, and that narrative follows the properties forever. Scorpios has changed hands twice since Athena sold it. Each time, the listing mentions the Onassis connection. It is simultaneously a selling point and a liability. The island's beauty attracts buyers. Its history repels them. The tension keeps the price depressed. Avenue Foch has been on the market 3 times since 2000, each sale at a loss. The mansion is located on one of the most expensive streets in Paris, yet it sells below comparable properties. Real estate agents privately acknowledge the Onassis association impacts value. Buyers want prestige, not tragedy. The phenomenon is not unique to the Onassis properties. Estates associated with violent deaths, suicides, or prolonged suffering consistently sell for 20 to 40% below market value. The stigma is measurable, quantifiable, persistent. Psychologists call it psychological contamination. The belief that spaces can be tainted by the events that occurred within them. Rationally, buyers know the house is just brick and mortar. Emotionally, they cannot separate the structure from its history. The knowledge that someone suffered there creates discomfort, avoidance, reduced offers. The Onassis properties exhibit this pattern perfectly. Scorpios, Avenue Foch, Fifth Avenue, all sold below value, all required extensive renovation, all struggled to find buyers willing to pay market price. The houses became financial liabilities, not because they were poorly built, but because they were too well known. The dynasty's public collapse had poisoned the real estate, and yet the houses endure. Scorpios is still a private island. Avenue Foch is still a mansion. The New York penthouse is still a penthouse. New owners occupy them. New lives unfold inside them. The architecture continues, but the family that built them is gone, completely. Aristotle, Alexander, Christina, dead. Athena, the last heir, lives in Switzerland. She has no children. When she dies, the Onassis name dies with her. The dynasty that was meant to last forever will not survive a single century. The houses will outlast the family. Marble endures. Wealth circulates. Property changes hands. But the people who believed these walls could protect them are gone. The mansions are not cursed. They are just empty, waiting for the next owners who will fill them with new dreams, new ambitions, new belief that architecture can substitute for permanence, and eventually those owners will leave too. The cycle continues. The houses remain. Psychologists argue that trauma attaches to memory, not walls, yet humans keep believing otherwise. Dr. Elizabeth Loftus, a cognitive psychologist, has studied memory and trauma for decades. Her research consistently shows that traumatic memories are constructed, not recorded. The brain does not store experiences like a video camera. It creates narratives from fragments, emotions, sensations, context, and then it links those narratives to physical spaces. This is why returning to the site of trauma can trigger physiological responses, not because the space is haunted, but because the brain has encoded the location as dangerous. The amygdala activates, cortisol floods the system, the body prepares to flee or fight, even when the original threat is long gone. Christina Onassis experienced this repeatedly. Every return to Avenue Foch triggered memories of overdoses, arguments, failures. The mansion was not causing her pain. Her brain was associating the space with pain already experienced. The distinction matters, but humans resist this explanation. We want to believe places can be haunted, that suffering leaves a residue, that walls absorb emotion and radiate it back. The belief is ancient, cross-cultural, persistent. Environmental psychologists have identified factors that intensify this belief. Large, empty spaces feel eerie. High ceilings distort sound. Marble floors echo. North-facing windows emit cold, gray light. These features create discomfort. The brain interprets discomfort as danger. And when the space is associated with known tragedy, the brain confirms its suspicions. The Avenue Foch mansion exhibited all these traits. 6 stories, 30 rooms, marble everywhere, poor natural light, acoustic properties that made footsteps sound distant and directionless. Staff described the house as oppressive, heavy. Some claimed to hear sounds that had no source. Rational explanations exist for all of these. Old houses creak, pipes expand and contract. Wind moves through gaps in windows. The human brain is wired to detect patterns, even when none exist. We hear footsteps because we expect to hear them. We feel watched because we know someone suffered there. But the rational explanations do not erase the feelings. Christina believed the mansion was hostile, that it amplified her pain, that leaving would bring relief. She was partially right. Leaving did bring temporary relief, but not because the house was cursed, because distance interrupted the association, broke the pattern, allowed her brain to reset. Other estates share this pattern. The Winchester Mystery House in California, built by Sarah Winchester, widow of the rifle magnate. She believed the house was haunted by victims of Winchester rifles, spent decades adding rooms, staircases, and doors to confuse the spirits. The house became a labyrinth, irrational, obsessive. Visitors describe it as unsettling. But the unease comes from architecture, not ghosts. The Amityville house in New York, site of a multiple murder in 1974. Subsequent owners reported paranormal activity. Investigations revealed no evidence of hauntings. But the reports persist. The brain cannot separate the space from the knowledge of what happened there. The Onassis properties fit this tradition. Scorpios, Avenue Foch, Fifth Avenue, all associated with loss, all described as oppressive by people who lived there, all resistant to sale. The pattern suggests something deeper than coincidence. But what? Some paranormal researchers argue that intense emotion can imprint on physical space, that suffering creates an energetic residue detectable by sensitive individuals. They point to consistent reports of unease in specific locations, to physiological responses measured in controlled studies, to patterns that rational explanations struggle to fully account for. Skeptics counter that these patterns prove human psychology, not supernatural phenomena, that our brains are wired to find meaning in randomness, that belief in hauntings reflects cultural narratives, not objective reality, that every claimed paranormal event has a mundane explanation if investigated thoroughly. Both perspectives have merit. Both are incomplete. The truth is probably this: places do not absorb pain, but they trigger memories of pain. And for people trapped in those memories, the distinction is irrelevant. Christina did not need the Avenue Foch mansion to be literally cursed for it to destroy her. The association was enough. The repetition was enough. The inability to escape was enough. Architecture matters, not because walls have feelings, but because humans do. And humans cannot separate space from experience. We build houses to protect us, then we fill them with our worst moments, and then we wonder why the rooms feel haunted. The Onassis mansions were not evil. They were just witnesses, silent, permanent, indifferent. They offered no comfort because they were not designed for comfort. They were designed to impress, to dominate, to prove a point. And when the family collapsed, the houses remained, doing exactly what they were built to do, standing, enduring, outlasting the people who believed they could be controlled. The Onassis mansions still stand, but the family they were meant to preserve does not. Aristotle Onassis believed architecture could substitute for security, that if the walls were beautiful enough, strong enough, expensive enough, they would protect his family from the poverty and displacement that had marked his youth. He built monuments, filled them with art, controlled every detail, and believed control would equal safety. He was wrong. The houses could not protect Alexander from a plane crash, could not stop Christina's overdoses, could not slow Aristotle's disease, could not keep Jackie from leaving, could not prevent the dynasty from collapsing within 3 generations. Because houses are not shields, they are stages, and the Onassis family performed their tragedy on 3 very expensive stages: Scorpios, Paris, New York, each one immaculate, each one silent, each one completely indifferent to the suffering it contained. The lesson is not that wealth is meaningless. Wealth provided the Onassis family with opportunities, access, and comfort that most people never experience. The ships generated fortunes. The houses offered beauty. The empire created legacy, at least in financial terms. But wealth cannot substitute for presence. Aristotle spent his life building and acquiring. He rarely stopped moving, rarely stayed in one place long enough to connect. His children grew up in mansions, but they did not grow up with their father. Christina later told friends she barely knew him, that he was always traveling, always working, always elsewhere. The houses were full, the relationships were empty, and when tragedy struck, the family had no foundation to stand on, no emotional infrastructure, no practiced intimacy. They had marble floors and ocean views, But they did not have each other. Alexander died alone. Aristotle died abandoned. Christina died isolated. 3 generations, 3 deaths, all preventable in theory, all inevitable in practice. Because the houses taught them the wrong lessons, that beauty matters more than warmth, that control matters more than connection, that property can outlast mortality. The houses were right about that last part. Property does outlast mortality. Scorpio's still exists. Avenue Foch still stands. The Fifth Avenue penthouse still overlooks Central Park. New families live in them now. New dreams, new ambitions. The architecture continues. But the Onassis family is gone. Athena Roussel, Christina's daughter, is the last heir. She inherited hundreds of millions of dollars. She lives in Switzerland. She has no children. She does not use the Onassis name. When she dies, the dynasty dies with her. Less than 100 years after Aristotle fled Smyrna with $60 in his coat. The empire he built will dissolve. The ships are long sold. The airline is defunct. The houses have new owners. The fortune has been divided and redistributed. Nothing remains except records, articles, photographs, documentaries, and the question of what it all meant. Aristotle Onassis escaped poverty by becoming one of the richest men on earth. He bought islands and airlines and mansions. He married the most famous woman in the world. He controlled governments and contracts and fleets. He proved conclusively that he could never be displaced again. But he could not protect his children, could not keep his wife, could not stop his body from failing, could not prevent his daughter from inheriting his fear and turning it inward, could not build walls strong enough to keep grief outside. The houses were supposed to be proof that he had won, that poverty would never touch his blood again. Instead, they became monuments to a different truth, that wealth without emotional connection is just expensive loneliness, that houses without warmth are just beautiful cages. That control is an illusion we build to distract ourselves from the fact that we control almost nothing. Aristotle built 3 mansions. His family died in all of them, metaphorically if not literally. The walls witnessed everything, absorbed nothing, remained standing after everyone left. And that is the legacy, not the ships or the money or the art, but the empty rooms, the silent hallways, the houses that outlasted the people who built them. Because in the end, architecture endures. But love does not build itself. Connection requires presence, not property. And no amount of marble can substitute for the willingness to be vulnerable with the people you claim to protect. Aristotle Onassis never learned that lesson. He built monuments instead, and his family paid the price. The mansions remain perfect, expensive, empty, exactly as he designed them.